I started doing the maths on it, and our budget was so small that there was literally no way I could deliver to the size of the market I needed to hit my commercial targets. The formula broke because the budgets were so small. And that's where you have to move into what I think are like a whole other set of levers.
You can also subscribe to extended cuts of these conversations, where my guests go deeper into how they actually think, make decisions, and handle the messy bits. But for now, enjoy the conversation. This is Marketing Careers Uncovered, and I'm Dave Hayward. Today, I wanted to have a look at a bit of a debate that sits at the heart of a lot of marketing careers. And it's that tension between the gold standard of theory and the grit that comes with reality. So if you've spent any time developing your marketing knowledge, you've probably encountered what we'll call the enterprise marketing framework. It's a very academic and professional approach, taught in MBAs, practiced and really trained by global giants. And that model and way of thinking is built on quite a specific, very disciplined order of doing things. It's logical, and it can be an incredibly effective system and way of doing things if you have the time and the money to spend to keep that going. Can you see the problem with that yet? So most of us are really in the trenches. We're either in high growth or early stage startups. We're in mid-sized firms where leadership want results by Friday, or we are what we could call intrapreneurs, where we're quite entrepreneurially minded, but we're inside big companies. We're essentially trying to move faster than the bureaucracy and systems around us allow. So for many of us, that enterprise framework can feel like a real straitjacket. So I really want to challenge some of that thinking. And I had the great fortune of coming across Lottie Unwin, who she's got some real pedigree here. She knows those big brand rules inside out, but through her work and experience, she's been advocating for a different approach. So I was really fortunate to be able to spend a little bit of time with her to discuss some of that thinking and how that actually plays out. So let's get to it. For anyone who's not come across you before, can you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Absolutely. I am Lottie. I am passionate about startup marketing and all things marketing. And I have lots of views, as you may have gathered. And I run 3 businesses. Up Club is a community for people in marketing and curated learning. Brand Hackers is fractional marketing teams for brands with limited resources and big dreams. And Up Talent is a marketing specific recruitment service. And I post a lot on LinkedIn and a little bit on TikTok on all things marketing. So follow me if you haven't come across me.
I've spent a fair amount of my career really being sort of fanboying and advocating for, let's call it the classical marketing framework, right? And what's presented as the disciplined, grown-up way of doing things, where we go through diagnosis first, strategy, and the whole don't let the tactics lead everything. Open up pretty fair few marketing textbooks, right? And that's the viewpoint you get. That's just how you do it, and that's how real businesses do it. But I think what I've often found and seen as well is loads of marketers out there. The expectation is move fast. You've got limited or no budget, even less resource backing you up. And when I heard you on a previous Upworld webinar where you advocated for a slightly different approach and way of thinking, I really wanted to test and stretch some of my own thinking too and discuss that with you.
Okay, shall I tell you the moment where I realized that everything I'd been taught at Blue Chip might not work? Because this is where it all started. There was there was a moment. Okay, so I started my career at Procter & Gamble, and like you, I mean, I am such a marketing geek. Like, I cannot think of a more fun way to spend my Saturday night than like watching a YouTube video. And I've just got a new baby, and so I don't do anything else on a Saturday night, and I'm fully fulfilling my wildest dreams of being that geek. And so when I was at P&G, I was like the in the front row of every training. I was the one that was like taking all the notes. I was so into it. And then I went to a startup, and I remember so vividly, my brief was like basically sell more popcorn. I was at Propercorn, and it was a really clear mandate. And I remember so vividly making my media plan, which was like, right, the principles of reach and frequency. So you've got to reach a number of people, and you've got to deliver a certain number of frequency. And that's how you move someone from I haven't heard of a product to I'm interested in it. And then I started doing the maths on it, and our budget was so small that there was literally no way I could deliver a frequency of 3 to anything like, let alone the 7 that I've been told was what we had to go for, let alone to the size of the market I needed to hit my commercial targets. And it's like the formula broke because the budgets were so small. And that made me realize that while the principles of reach and frequency make total sense, what startups have to do is drive disproportionate impact or make someone do something that at that moment is irrational. And that's where you have to move into what I think are like a whole other set of levers around being disruptive, around like really disproportionately powerful storytelling, yada, yada, yada. But like there was a moment where I realized that the textbook that I had bought into hook, line and sinker and had kind of resigned from this big job saying, look, I've had the perfect training. I really am ready to take on any marketing challenge, did not apply in a new environment. And then I had to start rethinking things.
I guess if you just spent 3 months pissing about on strategy and, doing everything very, very diligently, probably get left out of a room or kicked out of a room pretty quickly going, what on earth are you doing? We've got product to sell here.
Yeah. And that's particularly pronounced when you're at very early stage, like when you're very early in market. So we're doing some work at the moment for a sports nutrition product, and it is 6 months old. And yeah, there's the strategy deck we wrote, but the assumptions in the strategy deck have very quickly come unstuck as you take the product into the real world, which is almost a given. Of course, they're going to be a bit right and a bit wrong, and you've got to respond to that. And therefore, just the navel gazing is so futile because it's all so theoretical until you start putting the stuff out in the world.
Some of those principles and pressures, I don't think are unique to the startup world. It's any business that's got a disproportionately small marketing budget or footprint or has quite extreme growth ambitions. So actually, yeah, you can take your pick of quite a few PE-backed firms that are anticipating that exact same ferocity, let's call it. But are we setting ourselves up for failure a bit by reaching for the approach and looking at, well, it worked for the classic case studies that people wheel out, sort of Apple and all the others who have the luxury of time and investment. And actually, if they get it wrong, what really happens? Well, the business doesn't sink overnight, does it?
I don't know. I mean, I've not been in a big business when a massive initiative has failed. I can imagine it feels pretty brutal if you're at Unilever and you've launched a new Persil variant into a zillion stores and no one wants it because the strategy was completely wrong and you have to pull the whole line. I can imagine that feels pretty tough.
Oh yeah, it'd be pretty brutal, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I don't want to be that brand manager, but what's different in that environment is that it's a one-way door. Because of the power of the beast that you're operating within, you have the opportunity to go out into 2,000 stores immediately, and so it's a one-way door. What's different in early stage businesses is that it's very often such a one-way door because like momentum is more incremental than that. You don't have these big steps, and so much can be done and undone or iterated on that. I think, again, yes, I really passionately believe in strategy in terms of making decisions to what you're going to do and not do. But I think you need to be very careful of the time sink in strategy because so much can just be tweaked when it's in the world.
Yeah, and it's built on a bed of assumptions anyway, which we know end up being wildly wrong anyway. So if the model that you came to the realization that the models and approaches that we held dear just really weren't fit for purpose, how do you approach things now? Can you talk me through your role?
Yeah, so I think it's all about being very ruthless about what the next goal is and not worrying about the goals after that. I have this metaphor that I use until I'm blue in the face of climbing up a mountain. If you're in a big business, you start at the bottom of the mountain and you say, I'm going to the top. I think if you're in a small business, that really doesn't serve you because you forget that you haven't even got to the first pitch. And that is a huge challenge in and of itself. And so if you have a loose sense of where you're going, I think in a small business, the only thing you need to do is recognize what has to be true when you've reached pitch one and you can clip in and you're safe for 5 minutes and you can take a breath and only think that far ahead. And so what that means in reality is, say you're a snack bar and you're trying to become the most best-selling snack bar in the UK. If you're in a big business, as I say, you go in, you get the 2,000 stocking points, you have all the insight so that you know that your packaging is going to be right, and you kind of go this one shot at land grab, and then you build brand perception from there. If you're in a small business, the first goal might be to get 5 corner shops to stock your product. That's it. So then it's like, right, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to go and take a handmade cake to those 5 corner shops. I'm going to have a really nice chat with them. Great, job done. What's the next goal? The next goal is to get loads of people to buy that snack bar from those 5 corner shops so that you've got a great case study to take to other businesses. And then you approach it like that. So really, really carving up the steps and completely dismissing anything that is not going to affect that end goal, which is the goal that's going to keep you alive at each given point. And that, I think, is the huge difference. And so if I play that back to this kind of reach and frequency realization moment, I can't go after reach and frequency because I don't have the budget. So what do I need to do? I need to get 10,000 people to buy a bag of popcorn in Tesco's in the next 3 months. Right, well, reach and frequency isn't going to do that for lots of reasons because I don't have the time to do that. So I need to think much more creatively about what's the very standout thing that's going to just get a horde of people into stores to do a very specific job, and then worry about unprompted brand awareness, worry about those lagging metrics later.
How do you sell in that approach to senior leaders or founders who might hear that approach and be forgiven for coming away with a sense of, well, it doesn't feel very ambitious, Lottie? People expect to hear sort of big, grand visions, and we are going to get to the top of the mountain. How do you get that right?
It's just the framing. It's like amazing. It's the storytelling. It's like, yeah, this is where we're going. We're going to the top of the mountain, but these are the steps that we're going to take to get there. And here's how we're going to ladder them up. And actually, the kind of founders I'm talking to are so aware of how tight their budgets and time are that I would say it's the other way around. I'd say every time, like, their lived experience is that everyone just tells them that they're going to the top of the mountain and it's going to cost them a number that they can't get close to. And so for them, that's deeply frustrating and fundamentally just lacks insight and empathy as to what their world is like. So I'm pretty candid in saying, yeah, I understand where you're trying to get to, and I fully believe we will get there. But I think to respect where you're at in your business and to make sure that I'm not wasting your money, which is the one thing that they are most cautious about, we need to be very focused on doing the right things for you right now. So I'd say it goes down very well, and when it doesn't, it's clearly not the right fit, and I'm very much okay with that.
And does that take a particular set of skills or attitude from the marketer at the helm there? What's not being taught from a skills perspective that people should really start picking up? Commerciality
is the biggest thing. And I always coach on all the courses I run. The way I frame it is follow the money, relentlessly follow the money. And that's twofold. So the first place you've got to follow the money is kind of short term, within the year. What cash is there? What's runway? What has to be true to unlock the next bit of runway? So is that an interim fundraising goal? Is that you have to hit a certain revenue number in order for the business to be cash generating enough to be able to carry on operating as it is? That's one layer that I think marketers don't understand, and that's often because they don't have the confidence to ask the questions. And I do appreciate that they get rebutted a lot when they do start to dig there. But you cannot dig hard enough. Without that perspective, I think you're so blindfolded. And then the second layer of that is kind of end state financial reward. So basically people start businesses for cash and ego and a combination of the two. And so that cash is either going to be an exit, at which point there needs to be certain things true of the brand to generate that exit number that the founder's dreaming of, or the cash is in money taken out of the business as the business grows. Understanding what motivates your founder and what has to be true of brand and marketing to fulfill that financial goal for them is key. And again, those are just questions that don't get asked because we're uncomfortable about money and because it's not assumed that we need to know this stuff. So I think we often don't get let in the room. but being really tireless in your pursuit of like, I need to understand the P&L in full. I need to be best mates with the CFO. I need the founder to be confiding in me that they're worried about run rates, that they're worried about their exit valuation. That's the depth of relationship I think you need to be able to influence effectively.
And one of the best moments I've found to do that and build those relationships is day one. As soon as you come in, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, I want to meet as many people as possible, and getting your claws in with finance and operations as well, I do think gets overlooked a lot. The ultimate lesson here is, regardless of whatever doctrine you sign up to, plug yourself into every bit of the business.
Yeah,
and get a real understanding of what goes where and how a customer flows through.
I absolutely love what you said about doing it as soon as you walk into a business, because I think it's very hard to, like, a lot of what I do is coach marketing managers on how they get ready for leadership positions. And I think a lot of their challenge is that they've cornered themselves. And if you don't start asking those questions of ops, when you're suddenly like all up in ops's face, they're like, but you do the social media posts. Like, trying to reposition yourself is quite hard. It's not impossible, but I think it's hard. So I love your mantra of like, go in hot, because if you establish that that's what you are entitled to know, then that just becomes normal.
On reflection, I think that in a lot of ways, we were perhaps talking about the same thing. We were just using some slightly different language to describe it. So actually, we did spend quite a lot of time here talking about diagnosis as part of that strategic framework. And if you take that into a larger business or enterprise, yes, that is like a 6-week process that ends in a shiny sort of 50-slide deck that gets passed around the organization like a joint. But Lottie's sort of slightly I hate to use the word scrappy, but you kind of know what I mean. Yeah, a little bit more agile and fluid, and that really ruthless, immediate focus on what one or two things will actually move the needle this week, this month. I think it's still diagnosis, right? It's just the timelines are completely compressed, and actually is probably the more honest, functional form of that. I've worked in businesses that on paper look very much the same industry, similar size, same growth stage, same challenges. And yet each and every time I found that the levers I've had to pull to get a result were really, really different. Some were about brand and identity. Some were about sales enablement. Some were about actually building that functional engine from the ground up, because they'd gotten this far without a marketing function and wanted to take that to the next level. So all quite different. And now, had I walked in with my exact same playbook and style and approach, I wouldn't have lasted very long at all. That context is always absolutely unique, and that's something you can't really get from a template. You have to go into your organization. You have to go and explore. Be quite ruthless about what's actually going to make things move in the direction that we want them to. So before you go and build that approach, I think we've got to really understand 3 things. So as we talked about the commercials, right? How does this business actually make money, stay alive, and stay trading? That runway as well. So how much time do we really have to mess about here? I'm really cluing into that culture as well. So how does the organization actually behave? How do people work? How are decisions made? What kind of things do people value? And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a long-term strategic viewpoint. But we've also got to really clue into, what do I actually need to do right now, right this moment? And with that in mind, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe for future episodes, leave a review, or share with your friends and colleagues. See you next time. You can also subscribe to extended cuts of these conversations, where my guests go deeper into how they actually think, make decisions, and handle the messy bits.